Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are discussing a major development in the Mediterranean that is drawing global attention. Italy has sent a warship to protect humanitarian aid heading toward Gaza, and this move has triggered sharp reactions, including warnings from Israel. This situation is not just about one ship or one aid convoy. It reflects deeper tensions, shifting alliances, and the fragile balance between military power and humanitarian responsibility. To understand why this matters, we need to look at the background of Gaza's humanitarian crisis. Gaza has been under immense pressure due to prolonged conflict, blockades, and repeated military escalations. Essential supplies like food, medicine, fuel, and clean water have often been limited. International organizations and foreign governments have repeatedly raised alarms about the worsening conditions faced by civilians. Humanitarian aid to Gaza has always been politically sensitive. Israel argues that strict controls are necessary to prevent weapons or dual-use materials from reaching militant groups. On the other hand, many countries and aid agencies insist that excessive restrictions punish civilians and violate international humanitarian principles. This tension sets the stage for the latest confrontation. Italy's decision to deploy a warship is significant because it goes beyond diplomatic statements or financial aid. A naval vessel represents military commitment, deterrence, and national authority. By escorting or protecting aid shipments, Italy is signaling that it is willing to physically ensure the delivery of humanitarian assistance, even in a highly militarized environment. From Italy's perspective, this move can be seen as a moral and political stance. Italian officials have emphasized the importance of protecting civilians and upholding international law. Italy, as a member of the European Union and NATO, often tries to balance its alliances with humanitarian values. Sending a warship suggests Rome wants to be seen as an active player rather than a passive observer. Israel's warning in response to this action highlights the risks involved. Israel maintains naval control near Gaza as part of its security policy. Any foreign military presence in these waters raises concerns about misunderstandings, accidental clashes, or challenges to Israel's authority. Even if the mission is humanitarian, the presence of armed vessels changes the dynamics. Israel's position is rooted in its long-standing security doctrine. The Israeli government argues that Gaza is controlled by hostile forces and that any weakening of its naval enforcement could be exploited. From this viewpoint, allowing foreign warships to operate freely could set a precedent that undermines Israel's deterrence and control. At the same time, Italy's move puts pressure on Israel in the court of international opinion. Blocking or confronting a European warship escorting humanitarian aid could generate backlash. Images and reports of aid being delayed or turned away often resonate strongly with global audiences, especially during times of heightened humanitarian concern. This situation also reflects broader European frustration. Several European countries have expressed dissatisfaction with how humanitarian access to Gaza has been managed. Diplomatic statements, resolutions, and negotiations have often failed to produce tangible improvements on the ground. Italy's action may represent a shift from words to deeds. The European Union as a whole is divided on how to handle Israel and Gaza. Some member states strongly support Israel's security concerns, while others focus more on Palestinian humanitarian rights. Italy's decision may encourage other countries to consider more assertive roles, or it could deepen divisions within Europe. Another important aspect is international law. Under maritime law and the laws of armed conflict, humanitarian aid is protected, but naval blockades can be legal under certain conditions. The key issue is whether the blockade is proportionate and allows sufficient humanitarian access. Italy's warship implicitly challenges the adequacy of existing arrangements. There is also the question of coordination. If Italy coordinates closely with Israel, misunderstandings may be minimized. However, if communication breaks down, the risk of escalation increases. Even minor incidents at sea can spiral into major diplomatic crises, especially in such a volatile region. For Gaza's civilians, the presence of a warship might feel distant, but its impact could be real. If aid flows more reliably, it could ease shortages and suffering. Hospitals, shelters, and families depend on consistent deliveries. Any improvement, even temporary, can save lives. Critics, however, argue that militarizing humanitarian aid is dangerous. They warn that escorting aid with warships could blur the line between relief and military operations. This could put aid workers at greater risk in the long term and make future missions more controversial. Supporters counter that without protection, aid may never reach those who need it. In high-risk environments, security escorts are sometimes the only way to ensure delivery. From this view, Italy's action is a pragmatic response to a dire situation rather than an aggressive gesture. The regional context cannot be ignored. The Eastern Mediterranean is already crowded with naval forces from multiple countries. The United States, Russia, Turkey, and others maintain a presence in the region. Adding another armed ship increases complexity and the potential for miscalculation. Italy's relationship with Israel has generally been stable and cooperative. This makes the current tension even more notable. Rather than open hostility, the situation appears to involve firm warnings and diplomatic pressure. Both sides likely want to avoid a direct confrontation while defending their core interests. Media coverage plays a crucial role here. Headlines about warships and warnings can amplify perceptions of crisis. Governments must manage not only the physical situation at sea, but also the narrative. Public opinion, both domestic and international, can influence how far leaders are willing to go. For Israel, appearing too rigid could damage its relations with Europe. For Italy, appearing too confrontational could strain ties with a key regional partner. This delicate balancing act will shape the next steps taken by both governments. Another layer involves the United Nations and international aid agencies. These organizations often struggle with access and security. A successful Italian escort could set an example or open new pathways for cooperation. Alternatively, it could complicate existing frameworks if not carefully managed. The response from other Middle Eastern countries is also important. Some may welcome increased European involvement as a counterbalance. Others may view it skeptically, questioning motives and long-term intentions. Regional politics are rarely straightforward. Domestically, Italian leaders may also be responding to public pressure. Images of suffering civilians often generate strong reactions among voters. Taking visible action can demonstrate leadership and moral commitment, even if the risks are significant. In Israel, domestic politics also matter. Leaders must reassure their public that national security is not being compromised. Any perception of weakness can have political consequences, especially during periods of heightened tension. This situation illustrates a broader trend where humanitarian crises increasingly intersect with military and geopolitical considerations. Purely humanitarian solutions are rare in conflict zones. States must navigate ethical imperatives alongside strategic realities. Whether Italy's move will lead to lasting change remains uncertain. It could open the door to more secure aid corridors. It could also trigger stricter enforcement or new rules. Much depends on how all parties choose to respond in the coming days and weeks. What is clear is that Gaza's humanitarian crisis continues to drive international action. As long as civilians suffer, external actors will feel compelled to intervene in some form. The challenge is doing so without escalating conflict. This development also raises questions about the future role of Europe in Middle Eastern security issues. Will European states take on more assertive roles, or will this remain an isolated case? Italy's decision may be a test of Europe's willingness to back humanitarian principles with hard power. In the end, the presence of a single warship symbolizes much more than its physical size. It represents competing narratives of security, responsibility, and international law. It forces governments to confront uncomfortable questions about how far they are willing to go to protect civilians. As the situation unfolds, careful diplomacy will be essential. Clear communication, mutual respect, and a focus on humanitarian outcomes could prevent escalation. Failure to manage these factors could deepen mistrust and prolong suffering. For viewers, this story is a reminder that global politics often play out far from our daily lives, yet their consequences are deeply human. Decisions made by governments and military planners directly affect the lives of ordinary people caught in conflict zones. We will continue to watch how Israel, Italy, and the wider international community respond to this challenge. The stakes are high, not just for regional stability, but for the principle that humanitarian aid should reach those in need, even in the most difficult circumstances.